My name is Kathleen Martinez, and I'm an immigration attorney here in Dallas, Texas.
Hey everyone, it's Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, proudly representing Texas 30th Congressional District.
So on January 23rd, Texas Congressman Brian Babin and other Republican leaders gave a press conference on President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship. What exactly does this mean, particularly given that Texas has so many immigrants, an immigrant population that some weren't born here, some were born here? What does that look like?
Well, birthright citizenship is a constitutional right that you automatically get under the 14th Amendment. So having to revoke that, I mean, you would have to quite literally amend the Constitution. But why Trump is doing it is because he's trying to mass deport families together. Obviously, a lot of people or children were born here in the United States who had parents who are undocumented. So essentially, he's punishing parents for having children here in the United States. There's no way he will realistically get it done. I mean, there's already been about 18 states that have sued the Trump administration over the executive order, as well as the ACLU.
I don't know how y'all let him back. I'm just start there.
Say what the people thinking.
I don't know how y'all let him back, okay? As far as like the average Black person, they ain't got to worry about this. Because as I tell people all the time, you cannot return stolen goods. They don't know where they got us from
in the first place.
So it doesn't impact us in that way, like as far as like direct impact. But I'll be clear about this, is that we have a party that consistently says that they are for the Constitution. And honestly, being for the Constitution is really something that all Americans should be for. Whether you consider yourselves to be a Democrat, Republican, or independent, Absolutely. You should all be for the Constitution. It is the foundation of who we are in this country. And the idea that somebody would walk into the White House, someone who said, I am going to be a dictator on day one, and then think that he, with just his little pen and his little fingers and his little hands, can then somehow say, I am bigger than the Constitution, you should all be concerned.
Yeah.
It is more so the audacity or the caucasity that he has to say that I, as the president, I am a king, or I am a tyrant, or I am a dictator, or I am all three of the above, to the extent that I am going to sign this document that is nothing more than an executive order, and it somehow is going to be more powerful than our Constitution. And so, to be clear, those that were born in this country, regardless of the status of your parents, I don't feel as if you have anything to fear.
Okay.
But one of the things that they like to do is they like to stoke confusion and chaos. And that is what they've been able to do, is get people all kind of flurried. To be clear, it was a Republican appointed Reagan federal district court judge that was the first one to say, nope, not today. Not a Democrat, not an independent, but a Republican who said, he asked the attorneys, are you going to argue before me that this is constitutional? He asked the Department of Justice, because now the Department of Justice ain't nothing but a cesspool of injustice.
Correct.
But nevertheless, they are doing the bidding of the orange one. And so they walk in and he says, are y'all going to argue that it's constitutional? And they said, yes, Your Honor. He said, don't waste your time. That's stupid. I'll be back. Let me go get this order.
Right.
All right. So I had my first immigration hearing because I sit on the immigration subcommittee for judiciary now. And I knew that this was going to come up. And I was like, I can't wait to see this one, because y'all always love to tell everybody about the Second Amendment and y'all get that wrong too, but that's a whole other story. But nevertheless, I was like, we going to talk about this, and this going to be so interesting. I just couldn't wait. Somehow, like everything else in this country, when it comes to a certain group of people, Black folk are at the center of it. So they said, oh, do you know the history of this particular amendment? That's what they asked the witnesses. Do you know what year this came about? They asked the Democratic witness, and he said it was in the 1860s. And then so the Republican member that asked him about it says 1868. So he says, okay.
1860s.
And, right, yeah. And he goes, do you know what was happening? And so he says, well, it was the end of the Civil War. He's like, yes, this was for the slaves. This was for the slaves. That's all our founders meant. So basically, they're going to argue. You can't make this up. Run the tape, y'all. Run the tape. I said, nah, I'd be doggone. I didn't know how they were going to try to justify it, but they have decided
that
I guess that they gonna go into the courtrooms and say, now this was just for the
This
ones
was
that
for
we stole.
slaves.
This was not for the other ones. It was for the ones that we stole who labored and built this country. It wasn't for all these other people. Our founders never contemplated all these others. So I mean, really, we could go back. Give it back to the daggone Native Americans, and then we can't go back nowhere else. And let's see how y'all like
And
it.
start over.
Because the colonizers, y'all the colonizers, but that's a whole other story. So
For
I'm
another day.
I'm
Whew.
just saying.
They said it was for the slaves.
They said it was for the
My
slaves.
God,
Is
today.
this on the internet yet?
It is. It is.
No, I can't.
It
wait
was
to
on
post about it.
C-SPAN. It was on the things. It was on. I mean, literally multiple. In fact, I want to say, don't quote me on this one, but I want to say that the good black man from down in Houston, who's a Republican,
Mm-hmm.
argued the same thing. He argued the same thing.
Oh, no.
Can't make it up.
And that's what
This
they're
is my
doing.
life. This is my life.
They're trying to argue the interpretation of the Constitution, where the 14th Amendment is very black and white.
It is
If
very
you're
clear.
born in the United States, you're subject
Correct.
to the jurisdiction of and citizenship of the United States. There's no for exception for parents if you're undocumented. I mean, that could go back so far. It's just it's like a juvenile argument.
Yeah.
Like my toddler can make a better argument about that.
Yeah, I didn't know where they would go. They decided black folk.
Yeah. I
That
can't
is
believe.
crazy.
No wonder that's not on the internet. Not really on social media yet. Yet.
The power of yet. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
the
coming.
power of yet.
It's
That's
coming.
crazy.
Yeah,
But I
it's
don't. I
coming.
mean, Jasmine, I feel like you probably agree with me, but I don't think Trump realistically thinks that he will amend birthright citizenship. Right?
I don't think that it's about whether or not he will get it done. I think it's about testing the limits of
His
the
power.
powers
Yeah.
that he has with his Trump Supreme Court. And so he tried it before, and they shot him down over TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He
Mhm.
tried it with TikTok, and I was surprised that it was a 9-0 decision. It was very clear. Again, he is testing the balance of power, and it wasn't really about TikTok. It was about the fact that this was a law that had passed through the House, through the Senate, and was signed into law.
Mm-hmm.
So now are you going to say that with a pen or with whatever, I can just undo a law? And so he's going to keep pressing that. So he could not, if you could not undo an actual law that was written in, chances of you being able to undo the
Constitution,
Probably not.
the bedrock of
Probably
this
not.
country.
Yeah. He's just wasting time and resources.
As racist as they want to be,
That's a
I think
hard
that
one.
they are
Yeah.
like the slippery slope on this one
Mhm.
may be a little too far.
Too
for us,
slippery for
but
them.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, and to your point, right? He's trying to stoke fear. He's trying to say this is what's going to happen. But as far as you two are concerned, people here on DACA and Dreamers have nothing to be concerned about.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you really dig in on it, because I never practiced immigration law, so I'm not gonna pretend. I will tell you this: when I talk about concerns, I think from a foundational standpoint of the law should be on our side to the extent that even the most radical Supreme Court will not undo it. I think that that's what I mean about not being fearful.
Okay.
I do believe that fear is truly warranted in the sense that people of color are just going to be rounded up. I mean, I mean, we've lived it, especially as Black folk
Correct.
in this country, right? Like, it's the racial profiling. And so whether you're a US citizen, whether you are here as a DACA recipient, whether you are undocumented, whether you are naturalized, whatever your situation is, I think that if you can be mistaken for being a brown person,
Right.
that you should be concerned, because there is nothing that is tatted on anybody's head that says I'm undocumented or I'm a citizen, right? And so I think that there is real fear to be had, because it's the wild, wild west. You got basically a bunch of cowboys that's out here kicking in doors. Like, I just read something about going to some party or whatever where they arrested 50 undocumented people or something like that or whatever. So I think that you do have to fear for that. And the reality is that no systems have ever been perfect. Government has never been anywhere near being perfect. And so the idea that there will only be undocumented people rounded up is a farce.
Right.
And so there will be civil rights that will be violated for those that are citizens, as well as there are going to be civil rights and liberties that are violated for those that are undocumented. So I think that there's real fear to kind of go all the way around.
Oh, absolutely. They're even, I heard today on CNN that they are, ICE is detaining indigenous people and asking indigenous people from the
It's
Navajo
Steakhouse.
tribe to prove that they're
It's
citizens.
Steakhouse. It was
That's
for
what
years.
In Arizona, in the state of Arizona, where, you know, United States versus Arizona in 2012,
Mhm.
they ruled the show me your papers law
Yeah.
was obviously unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional.
Yeah, and they're doing it again. They don't
Yeah.
care. And I think they know it's unconstitutional. They know they'll get backlash, but it's testing the powers, as Jasmine said. Now, regarding DACA, dreamers are terrified because the way the program is set up is that it's very vulnerable to litigation, the way it
Okay.
was created, for stupid reasons. Basically, right-wing states have been suing the program to try to get it rescinded forever, for years. Now, the craziest part is that Trump was on ABC News, like what, last month, saying that he felt for dreamers and he wants to give them a pathway to citizenship. But in 2017, he tried to take away their program altogether. He took away their ability to leave the country legally. He tried to take it away completely, and now it's been in this like weird position where only people who are grandfathered into the program have it, but no new applicants can get it. But he then on TV empathized with dreamers because he was like, these are children who were brought to the United States, not by their own decisions. Their parents brought them, and they've been living here, working here, paying taxes. They've never been to their home country. Some of them don't even know the language.
Correct.
I mean, they've been contributing to our economy their whole life. They're no different than me. You know, it's just, and it's crazy because I just don't believe a word that Trump says on DACA with his
Mhm.
back and forth crap. Like I don't understand it. So they are vulnerable. Dreamers are terrified. I mean, they are so scared. Immigration attorneys are scared because I don't know what to tell them every day. I'm sometimes changing my mind on my advice with them.
Yeah.
You know, because they're asking, can I leave the country on advance parole, which is a legal way for them to leave and come back for humanitarian reasons. And right now I'm like, no, he just shut
Yeah.
down the border. Like, let's wait.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, well, this attorney said this, and I'm like, this is Trump. This is
You
Trump.
never know.
Right. I never know. And also, the scariest part about Trump is that he's giving Customs and Border Patrol broad discretion. They've always had broad
Mhm.
discretion to like not let people back in the country, even if they have a green card. But you know they're abusing that right now.
Of course.
Yeah, they have the full right and authority to take advantage of that. So I'm having a few people call me saying, I have a green card, I'm not being let back in the country. They're accusing me of fraud, of getting my green card by fraud, or I'm a citizen and they're not letting me back in. Yes. And dreamers, yeah, dreamers are the scariest because they really don't have legal status. They truly just have work authorization and temporary protection. There's no pathway to citizenship for them.
So you made a comment about contributions to the economy. We're kind of at a perfect storm moment that I'm seeing of the bird flu and everything that's happening with that happening, and then
Yeah.
people not being able to go to work, being scared to go to work, not being let back in the country. And we know that our immigrant populations are often our biggest contributors on our farmlands, in our industrial spaces. What does that look like for our economy if this actually works, if this passes?
Okay.
That's gonna be a long one.
This is what I want people to understand. Somehow, so many people were hoodwinked into demonizing the immigrant community. I tell people all the time, I'm not really asking for you to agree with anything. I really don't care how people feel about nothing. I really don't. Whether you agree with the LGBTQIA community or not, whether you agree with abortion or not, whether you agree with immigrants being here or not, I don't really care how you feel. Okay? I don't really care what you understand.
Okay.
But let me be clear about something. All y'all was complaining about the cost of eggs. All of y'all was complaining about the cost of eggs.
And they finna be sky high.
So I just want you to educate yourself. Even if for whatever reason you got hoodwinked into believing that your black job disappeared because of the immigrants, unless your black job was on the farm, I doubt the immigrant took it.
It was safe.
Unless your black job was getting on the ladders and building these houses where y'all are complaining that the cost of housing is too high. I don't know that they took your black job. Unless your black job was working in hospitality and making sure that the beds were made and things like that. And I'm making it very simple because it's a lot more complex, obviously, when we really dig into the nitty-gritty, when we start talking about the various type of visas that we give out and things like that. But it is easier for me to make people that are very selfish understand that this is their fight too. Even if you don't care about other people, which would be a terrible way to live. But even if you don't, you care about yourself.
Correct.
And so I need people to understand how food makes it to the grocery store. I need people to understand that as people, their number one complaint was the cost of housing. You have to understand that we're in a housing shortage in general. You have to understand that there's so many things that contribute to housing, from us having supply chain issues where everything was interrupted because of COVID-19, to the extent that we still haven't necessarily fully loosened those supply chains. They obviously are moving a lot better, but it did not necessarily get fixed. To the extent that you have the same billionaires that were sitting right there at inauguration that have decided as CEOs of companies, you know what, we lost money during COVID-19, so now we're going to price gouge. So we're still having to deal with that, as well as the fact that cost of labor is a real issue. And so when you have people, because we live in a capitalist society, they try to say we socialist, and what we are a capitalist country, we capitalists. That's what we are, right? What does that mean? That means you got people that are rich and you got people
The
that are
haves and the
poor,
have-nots.
right? But here's the reality of why immigration actually works. Because we tell everybody the only way you can be anything in this country is you got to go and get a college degree, which I don't subscribe to that, y'all. I'm just telling y'all what the general thing is, right? All right, so we're telling everybody, go get all this debt so you can kind of make some money. Well, if I'm going to get a bunch of debt, I'm not going to go work certain jobs because I'll never get enough money to pay off that debt, right? But if I am, say, trying to take care of my family who's back in my native land, and they don't have as many job opportunities back there as exist in America, even though the wages are lower for the work that I'm doing, because the dollar, at least as of right now, is still very strong. When I send that money back home, it is going so much further, even though it's a fraction of what, say, the rest of us are making. So I'm just like, how y'all gonna make this work? Y'all gonna start paying, farm workers $50 an hour? Because I don't even know if y'all gonna go out there for 50 an hour.
Nope.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, which way do you want it?
What's the plan?
Do you want the price of eggs to go down or not? And the final point that I'm gonna make before we get to the real expert about eggs, because you brought up the flu,
Yeah.
the birds,
The birds, child.
Right,
They done
so
killed 100,000.
So the eggs come from the birds, y'all. The eggs come from the birds. I'm glad we're having this lesson.
Which came
today.
first?
Right, exactly. We don't know, the chicken or the egg, but nevertheless. So right now, another danger of the incompetence of this administration is that they don't want reporting of real issues such as this. I mean, Trump was furious when COVID happened and he could not continue to keep it under wraps because he was informed way before we were, right? And they were like, finally, like, yo, we've got, like, there's this silent killer, right? Well, here's the deal. If we say get rid of CDC, if we say that there's not going to be any oversight whatsoever as it relates to our food supply, then yeah, they may start sending us infected birds and infected eggs, and we may start getting sick and dying, and he doesn't care. That is a problem. That is, I mean, we know that the last time and the only modern day president where literally citizens were just dying was him. And it was his incompetence. We didn't have to lose over 1 million United States citizens.
Yeah.
We didn't have to. Not us. I mean, he had the playbook from a black man, because that's what we do. Barack Obama left him the playbook, and most people don't remember the Ebola breakout because
it was so small.
It was contained.
Yeah, it was contained very quickly.
It was contained
very quickly.
And the playbook was left for him, and he decided, probably because it was a black man that left it, that he was going to ignore it. And so it still boggles my mind that we could not go out in this election and say, on behalf of those that are not here today, I'm voting to make sure you don't make it back because my auntie, my uncle, my granny, my sister, my brother died because of you. That somehow did not hit people to the extent that they said, I cannot do this, guy.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about underreporting is really important because like the IRS reports every year that undocumented immigrants pay billions in taxes every single year.
Billions with a B.
With
Estimated close to 100 billion.
yeah, like 100 billion. I think you said that.
Yep.
That you're hearing. And it's just, and every time I post about it, MAGA's like, no way. And even like people on our side are like, I had no idea. How did they do that? It's so underreported. And I'm like, you don't need like a social security to work legally. But you can totally pay taxes without documentation.
Without documentation.
Yeah, you just do it with something called an ITIN number. So it's funny because there's this notion, like Jasmine was saying, is that we treat immigrants like a certain type of like boogeyman theory.
Mhm.
Like, they're dehumanizing them and making them to seem like criminals when they're not. But every single immigrant who calls me for a consultation asks, how do I get a work permit? I just want to work
That's
legally.
it.
Which
That's
is
it.
funny.
All these ICE raids are happening at places of work.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to people's home. They're going to businesses
Yes.
for these ICE raids. So
Yes.
how are they
Right.
so
The same
lazy
people
and
who claim that they're lazy and that they're
they're
living off
happening
the
at
government
warehouses
are
and
raiding their places of work.
farms. Exactly. So
Yeah, they
Yes.
all just want to work. And I know these people from MAGA. I know those billionaires visit their countries all the time.
for vacation.
And they see how hardworking these people
Mhm.
are. And immigrants are generally so much harder working than us. And they also typically know more than one language. They're more
Yeah.
employable. They work
Yeah.
twice as hard because they have something to earn. They appreciate
Yeah.
being here, whether they're documented or not.
Yeah.
So they don't take anything for granted. And every employer in that inauguration knows that. I mean, they're fighting for their legal immigrants, illegal immigrants. They know that they're the hardest working people. So the uneducated MAGA media, when it comes to like immigrants are criminals, when that's not real.
Yeah.
I mean, like, or they're coming here to live off the government when you literally need status to live off the government. I mean, it's mind boggling. And I'll do so many videos trying to explain it, but they're just like, no way, or you're wrong. And they don't want to hear it.
Of
And
course.
I think the undertone of it is, it's not just ignorance, it is racism.
Yeah.
That's what
And
At its core,
and
that's
it's-
what it is.
And,
Yeah.
and the one thing that you said about crime, they commit less crimes.
yes.
These are the numbers. This isn't just data. This is someone who worked in the criminal defense space. I can tell you,
Yeah.
like they were not the ones that were getting
Correct.
locked up all the time, right? And so all the numbers across the board, because they do look at being in this country as an opportunity. They appreciate the fact that they now can support their families in ways that they've been unable to do so. And so they don't want to cross the law.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be like sent away. It's kind of like, your kids, they act bad at the house and they'll tear it up, right? But when company comes
over,
the company is like, I want to be able to come back, right? That's kind of what it
Yeah.
is. Like, don't kick me out. I want to be able to come back. I
Yeah.
had fun,
Yeah.
right? That's the difference. And they continue to, they play on the ignorance of Americans as a whole.
Mhm.
It's just a lot that people don't know. And that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
It's because immigration is complicated, because people are like, well, why don't they just come work? They are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? People say, well, why don't they just become citizens? They trying.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, like,
We won't let them. We won't
Right,
let them
like,
work. We
they're-
won't let them become citizens. You can't just apply for a work permit, by the way. You have to have a pending green card. And in order to have a green card, you have to have someone petition for you. You have to get married.
Oh wow.
So you can't independently own status or a work permit on your own merit, which is funny because isn't that their whole thing? Isn't
Yeah.
MAGA all about not living off the government, earning
Yeah.
your own keep? But
Yeah.
we're not letting them do that. So all they do is complain, immigrants aren't working, they're lazy. We'll give them the opportunity
To work.
It's a piece of
Yeah.
paper, just print out a work permit.
yeah.
It's not that much from us.
So final two questions, different questions for each of you. For you, what protections, if any, exists for undocumented workers?
I mean, constitutional rights. So,
Okay.
and a lot of people don't understand this,
Right.
Which just blows my mind. But they have constitutional rights. So they undocumented immigrants, anyone who is geographically located in the United States, has the protection of due process.
Okay.
And so they cannot be racially profiled and requested to prove their citizenship. If they want to sue someone, they can do that. If they've been in the United States for more than 2 years and ICE comes up and apprehends them, they have a right for their day to court to explain their case in front of a judge. Even if you are in active removal proceedings, you have the right to go in front of your judge and tell your story and defend your case and hopefully get legal status out of it. So you still have rights, you still have the ability to remain silent and call an attorney. And a lot of people are spreading misinformation saying that undocumented immigrants don't have that right. And a lot of even undocumented immigrants even think they don't have those rights.
Yeah.
They absolutely have the ability to protect themselves, obtain legal status, and defend themselves in court.
Okay. I hope y'all heard that loud and clear.
Mhm.
And then for you, Congresswoman, I've lived in D30 all of my life. Yes. And it's what, a week and a half into the administration, and people are already like, what do we do? Feeling hopeless almost. And so my question to you is, at a boots on the ground level, what should we be doing here? One, to help support you while you're in Washington, but two, to uplift and organize with each other. What does that look like?
Yeah, so first of all, I love Texas 30. I'm sure MAGA hates y'all, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I think that number one, it is important. Really, there's a job on both sides, right? I think that for the longest, people are like, well, what are the elected officials doing? And then we're like, well, y'all gotta do y'all research. It's a combination of both, right? So I do my best to make sure that I'm consistently communicating with the district, making sure that they're getting the information about what I'm doing, what all craziness everybody else is doing, so that when somebody tries to come at them with disinformation, they're like powered with the fact that they've got education, right? So they're like, nope, because Rip already told me about this, right? But I think that one of the things that I really want to pick up on about what we need most is to recognize that our strength comes when we are together. And I think that we allowed ourselves to be divided in this last election. And it ended up being a matter of, well, that's not my issue. That's not my problem. That's over there. This is I think that we have to understand that underlying everything that's going on is white supremacy.
Correct.
So if you're not a white supremacist, then we all need to be on the same side. And in my mind, I could be wrong, there are more of us that are not white supremacists than there are white supremacists.
God, I hope so.
I hope so.
Every single thing that you look at is out of the white supremacy playbook.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to keep up with the just kind of mountain of bull that's coming out every other day. The reality is that there's a white supremacy agenda and it is moving really quickly. And you can't afford, especially as a person of color, to sit back and say, well, I'm not an immigrant, so that ain't my issue.
Yeah.
Or I'm not gay, so that ain't my issue. No. Because the reality is that they're coming for each and every one of us.
For all of us.
And so again, it's not about whether you agree or understand. It's about whether or not you believe that we all are entitled to the freedom that allegedly this country offers, unlike any other country. It's about whether or not you want our country to still be a place where no matter who you are, you can matriculate and actually reach some of the highest levels of government. You can be this self-made millionaire. These are stories that are only written in this country.
Yeah.
And so stop worrying about whether you agree or understand. Just understand that if they can attack one person's freedom, then they can attack yours.
Absolutely.
And so it's time to come together instead of being so divided. So we don't need to operate in silos. And I honestly would love it if we start to have conversations where we try to understand, what is it that you're feeling now that they're going after diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah.
What is it that you're feeling now that your child that you know is more than capable somehow did not get admitted to this school? What is it that you're feeling? How is it that I can help you? Because any movement that has ever really taken form has only taken form because there have been allies as well. So we got to come together. So that's the only thing I got to say.
I love it. What I heard you both say was education across, knowing your rights, knowing what's happening, knowing what's going on in the world around you, knowing your neighbor, reaching across the aisle. Absolutely. Attorney Martinez, Congresswoman, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.